So the no vote has taken place. The Greek people have said very specifically that they don't want anything to do with that BS debt coming from the European Union. And they have said this very firmly, very loud. I think 61% is certainly a strong mandate. But the question is before us. Where do we go from here? Yanis Varoufakis, I think that's how you say it, who was the finance minister in Greece. Now I say was because he's not there anymore. He has stepped down from his position. And he's made it fairly clear why he's no longer in that position. I mean, the guy was incredibly popular. I mean, he had a really strong support from the public because he had great charisma, and he was actually doing what people wanted, to say no to paying that debt. Yet the guy has just suddenly left his job. Well, what's going on there? The fact is, the EU can't stand for him to be in that position because he was basically blocking them from getting all of their ridiculous demands. And this is what the man said himself. Soon after the announcement of the referendum results, I was made aware of a certain preference by some Eurogroup participants and assorted partners for my absence from its meetings, an idea that the Prime Minister judged to be potentially helpful to him in reaching an agreement. For this reason, I am leaving the Ministry of Finance today. Essentially, the complaint here is that he wouldn't give the EU what it wants, all of its money, without conditions. He was too difficult to deal with, meaning he was actually standing up for what it is that the Greek people want. Well, this kind of gets in the way of the EU getting what it wants. So because they weren't getting what they want, the EU, and possibly under the influence of the IMF as well, got rid of him because he wouldn't just hand them whatever he wanted. But this also occurs in a bigger context. The government of Greece is a left coalition made up of a lot of leftist groups. Now, the EU has expressed its displeasure for that. Now, we watched this Syriza group start kicking out all of its radicals. All the Maoists were kicked out, all of the Trotskyists were kicked out, all the other radical leftists were just booted from this group. Popular people who were resisting what it is the EU wanted, including Yanis. And this is a very important thing that we have to keep in mind when we're looking at this situation and what the fallout of a no vote is going to be. When we look at Greece historically, what we see is a country that has never really been out on its own. It's always been made subject of some country or another. And the main reason being that the country is so small. It can't really build up enough economic power that it can stand by itself. And it's no different with the EU. A lot of people said at the beginning that Greece joining was going to be a bad idea and that it was going to collapse and that it didn't work. I maintain, as a lot of people did, it was never intended to work. Greece was never intended to be a success in the EU. That all of this has been what they've wanted from the beginning, for the country to basically fail and be turned into a cheap labor pool for the rest of Europe. And that this is the position that they had always intended it to be in. They had never intended Greece to be an equal partner in this greater European Union. Greece's historical role has not changed. Basically, Greece is in a hell of an economic situation. Its rate of profit has basically plummeted since the 1960s, and its debt has skyrocketed at about the same level, mainly because of insane interest rates and the, as Marx said, magic of compound interest. So, what can Greece do in this situation? Well, they have three main options. One solution is to go the route that the Troika is demanding, neoliberalism. Cut back on public spending, keep wages down, and force pensioners and others to pay more. In theory, this would raise the profitability of Greek capital. Combined with extra foreign investment, at the same time, they'll have to hope that the EU economy will expand greatly in order to help them. Relying, of course, on the rising tide lifting all boats thing. Except that this plan has consistently failed. Eurozone capital profitability has only slightly improved, and growth has been very weak. The next solution is the Keynesian one. Public spending, cancellation of part of the government debt, leave the euro for its own money. It would have to be devalued to a point to make it competitive. This idea has already been rejected by the Troika. For this to work, Greek capital has to be able to recover with a lower currency rate and that more public spending will increase demand without further lowering profitability. This is dangerous because the profitability of capital is key to recovery in a capitalist economy. Even if Greek companies export more, they will have a devalued currency, it still has to pay their existing debts in euros. This buries their ability to pay it back. With the devaluation comes inflation, which will increase profitability because it will cut into the real incomes of the majority of wages which have failed to match inflation. This is similar to what Greek people have already rejected. They'd be kicked out of the EU and lose their social funding and possibly sabotaging their own plans. The third solution is for Greece to turn socialist. Now, Greece could do it, but there would be retaliation from the EU that would be absolutely devastating. Now, even if they did go into a planned economy, it would take them a very long time to recover. I mean, we're talking more than a decade. And during that time, there would be a great deal of economic suffering. All their benefits and everything that they want back will be literally impossible to give. I mean, we're talking worse than the special period in Cuba after the loss of the Soviet Union as a trading partner. It's going to be so bad that people will reject socialism and demand the old ways come back. In the meantime, there's a very serious threat that the country will go full fascist as a result. If capitalism failed, and in their eyes socialism failed, fascism is what they're going to turn to. No matter what happens in the end, there's two likely things to happen. One, they're going to keep replacing their finance minister until they get one that will give the EU what it wants. Or they could leave the European Union. Now, these are the two main things that can happen. What's going to happen, I don't know, but I believe that these are the two main paths. This is one of those things that reminds us why we need revolution, not reform. When Syriza came in, everybody thought that this was going to be a great thing and it was going to solve all the problems and they were going to tell the EU to screw off with their debt and all that. But it hasn't happened. And it's not going to happen because this is reform, not revolution. So either the government is eventually going to sell out its own people to this debt, or it's going to have to leave and get squashed through economic retaliation. And if it does end up leaving, I don't think socialism will pull out of its position, because I don't believe the people will actually be willing to go through the period of suffering necessary to start up a planned economy and recover back to where it was. All those benefits that they're demanding back right now won't be available for over a decade. And I don't believe the people of Greece will actually tolerate that. What will happen is there will probably be some kind of fascist coup during that time, and they'll end up going back into the EU. Probably because that fascist coup will have good public support, and it'll probably be funded by someone like the United States or the European Union. So that's generally what I think the situation in Greece is right now, and what I think is likely to happen. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of them, then head over to my Patreon page and show your support. Or you can go to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share on various social media.